So welcome to this continuation of, and really, it's kind of amazing I can put something out and be like, beyond just stuff, maps, and mystery, and mundane physics, and then if there's anyone that is also interested in this. And we've been in this kind of experimental, directly experiencing sense of exploration around some of the things that can come up around what we think physics says the world is like. And really for the last, quantum physics had its 100th anniversary, 100 years of quantum physics. Still don't know if we know what it actually means any more than 100 years ago. Open question for sure. But part of this exploration is actually inquiring into the effects that a scientific story, scientific knowledge, scientific models, and Master Park, who is a physicist as well as a Tai Chi master, that has been a very deep influence in my own journey in life. He always says physics is a story, which sometimes can throw people or not. Physics is a map in the way that we've been talking about, where we have, how do we know or feel or experience anything is through some kind of perceptual, cognitive, or whatever it is. But it includes all of our experience. We experience it through a map. And so this is not to be dismissive at all of physics, to say, oh, physics is a story, physics is a model or a map. But sometimes physics tends to have this kind of danced around this as a kind of authority that people either buy into or push against. And it's like this sense that physics has, it is it, right? That physics gives us some way of saying this objectively is what is real. And another interesting thing, but maybe this will be a story for another day, is Master Park talks about how objective really just means it's easier for us to agree. And science as an enterprise is empirically based, falsifiable, so it makes it easier to agree, but we're still not touching in on the terrain. Still not. But when the story of physics changes, as it did 100 years ago, where we went from a sense of, Newtonian corpuscles, and they can just the world is just all orderly, and there's just these kind of billiard balls, and it was both the Enlightenment in in Europe, and that sense of greater knowledge of the world that has become what we can do so much with these days. But at the same time, it's tended maybe to rob a little bit of the sense of mystery. It didn't need to, but that's kind of the way that it seemed to unfold, speaking rather generally here, broad strokes. And then quantum physics came along. And last time we kind of explored what it's like to sense our experience with a story that we're quote unquote mostly empty space. So there's this kind of like trying on different maps as a kind of lens, and how does that help us feel just our fingers, our feet on the ground? And that was, we talked about like the Rutherford experiment where they shot, these beams of particles at gold foil, and some bounced right back, and that was the discovery of the nucleus of the atom, and most just went straight through, or small deflections, and was able to see, oh wow, the atom is 99.999 whatever empty space. And today we'll use another experiment from this line of inquiry in science about the nature of fundamental particles, and then apply it again in meditation to see, is this another map that I am actually experiencing more of? Or maybe this is kind of giving me permission to let go of some of my assumptions and open more directly to my experience as it is. And so this experiment is the one that, kind of tends to, well, there's a lot of things about quantum that blows people's minds, but this one is starting to get a little juicier, kind of progressing through the strangeness of what this fundamental layer, according to science, might be like. And so this experiment is a classic double slit experiment. And so you can imagine, again, this time we'll say it's a beam of electrons. And then you have a shield here, and you have two slits. And, if this was not a beam of electrons, but actually a water wave coming through, that when it hit those slits, then the water would have to go through the slits, and then it would create that kind of circular ripples around each semicircle of ripples around each. I'm making lots of random gestures for those of you who can't see, making all these little kind of concentric. And then if you have a detector here between, so that there's the kind of the shield with the double slits, and then on the other side of the wall there's, say, a detector of a way you can measure the amplitude of what's coming through. What you notice is the classic diffraction pattern, where instead of it just being, all kind of the same, there's some places that will get a higher wave And some places that will get almost no sense of a wave at all. This is the classic interference pattern of wave-like motion that's very well known and studied in physics. And then we also have a sense of what would happen, if we were, throwing ping pong balls through two slits. They would go through one slit or the other slit, and they would hit, right across from the opening of the slit on the detector. So particles and waves, and what kind of helped us to recognize that maybe our macroscopic sensibilities of what there is can't quite map onto some of these fundamental particles. Is that if you have one electron at a time going through past the double slit, and then there's the detection on the other side, that you'll get one ping of a detection on the detector. They will not be right opposite the slit. That's kind of interesting. And if you do enough of them, then what you uncover is the same diffraction interference pattern of some very, high amplitude bright spots and some spots that don't get any, electron hitting them at all. And you can really, if you're wanting to try and figure out, well, is an electron a particle? Or is it a wave? And one of the ways we torture ourselves is, well, how does it know about the other slit? How does it know? Yeah. And that's just not even a very helpful question. Is it a particle or is it a wave? Does it go through one slit or both slits? There's just something else other than our more commonplace macroscopic sensibilities that is going on. And just even as I talk about that, you can just check in and notice how it affects you just to hear that. I mean, I've heard it many, many times, and it never quite feels familiar. There's still something that feels like an opening to an unknown. And most of what we experience, physically, is a sense of, even as we touch ourselves, we kind of played playfully with last time, a lot of what we experience is electrostatic force. Coming from that behavior of the electrons. that are not particles, are not waves. Are not something we can put a real finger on interpretively. It's definitely the mathematics for that. It's quite accurate. But interpretively, it is hard to say, that's it. As we explore this sense of maps, it's just part of the experience is what is it like when we even relate to our maps without a sense of that is it. That is it. That's the final story. My body is just my body. I know what my body is. That's it. And one possibility that we can play with here is that quantum, like this, not a particle, not a wave stuff, it kind of gives us a map in a way. And the map itself is saying, this is not it. So it lets us, instead of like the first session where it's like, oh, this came from Richard Feynman, who's a very famous, influential particle physicist, of like being beamed into into a human form, and you don't know anything, but you might have noticed that first session it was kind of like hard to sustain that imaginative thing. But here it's like, physics is giving us permission in a way. We don't have to use our imagination as a experiment that can be replicated. So it's kind of giving us a license almost to have this map that instead of being some of our typical like sheet of paper maps that has like, this is it, and you can't see through it. It's almost like a transparent map where it's like, this is something here, and you can kind of see through it to something else where there's something else. It's not a particle, it's not a wave underneath. But the map itself can't say what that layer underneath is. So let's begin to play with this experientially. A body-centered meditation, as we tend to practice here. A body-centered practice. And yet the body is made up of what exactly? You're welcome to settle in. And close your eyes if you'd like. And just taking some full deep breaths. And beginning to gently turn inward. To that inner experience of the flow of the breath. And I know for so many years I meditated thinking about the breath rather than actually feeling the breath. And I'm still doing that. There's still these films of preconception about what it is that I'm experiencing. As I begin to feel my body, and just noticing that. And letting those out breaths, whatever they are, to help you feel like you can let go and settle more into the support beneath. And even however your hands are resting, letting the hands lay down into the support of your lap or whatever is underneath them. And the shoulders too. They get to lay down. Each out breath lets the shoulders lay down. And feel more of that contactful sense of support from beneath. And feeling that sense of shoulders, hands, and seat all laying down into support. A bit all at once. All together. that there's a feeling of solidity and groundedness, like sitting like a mountain. One way to feel more the all-togetherness is that sense of the space your body takes up. Have the outline, volume of your whole body, shoulders, hands, see. And what is this body, this volume of space that our body occupies? What's filling it? Don't have to answer with words, but see what your first assumption is of what's filling this 3D volume of your body. What do you expect to find there? And just try it on, see what it's like. That whatever it is, rising it. It's not a bunch of billiard balls, however small. It's not even the familiar ways that waves interact. It's something we can both very directly point to, but not quite interpret in any familiar way. What's filling your body now? And if you say a probability distribution, then the invitation is to actually, well, how do you feel a probability distribution? Or just what opens up by letting ourselves have a more transparent layer to our maps. Able to be rational and practical and modern if we care about those things. And also touch upon a not knowing and a mystery. Seat, hands, shoulders, familiar landmarks. But in what are those landmarks happening? Letting this fullness of the body, full with whatever it's full of, just linger on here. We begin to feel more the air coming in and out of our nose. Air, nose, but what's going on? A lot of times we use this part of the practice to feel more into the ever finer flows of nature. Just noticing what we expect to find, expect to feel. Really, even all the baggage of shoulds that can come about. feeling the breath in meditation. What's this supposed to do for us? How good we should be at it. It can be a very familiar mapping. And what is the breath? What is this air? What uninterpretable dance of fundamental particles filling our nose and our lungs. Our nose and our lungs, not different from that all together dance. Fundamental particles that are not particles, that are not just waves. So, like to just feel the sensations that are familiar. Breath at the nose, with some sense that there's a level that is utterly unfamiliar to us, which it's going on. Now, when one begins to drop more into a sense of falling through the known maps into a kind of mystery. And it's harder to get oriented towards a should. What we should expect, or how we should be, or should practice, or should experience. Just don't quite know where we are, even though in a way we know it more than ever. And then typically in this series of intervals of practice, we have a sense of intermixing the feeling of fine free flow in the air with an openness to the fineness of our body. By breathing in, feeling the air coming down into our lungs, and then breathing out and following down this cascading wave of our front body on the out breath. But perhaps with today's exploration, there's already less sense of difference between air and body. So continuing to sort of toggle back and forth, feeling the air, feeling the body. It's a sense of letting that whatever opened to, and feeling it at the nose, and whatever opened to, feeling it in the volume of your body, kind of intermix and mingle. Since what we're feeling into isn't distinct, between this or that, air or body, more universal, fundamental. how can this body that is so substantially solid in some ways also feel so incredibly subtle at the same time. It's even the words we tend to try and put to it. Energy, chi, prana, just seeing if this neither particle nor wave every little tiniest bit according to the authority of science is neither a particle nor a wave, but something else. And from that mapping, it might be easier to feel both solid and substantial and subtle and exquisitely delicate within one and the same experience itself, just in what we call the body. And let's begin to feel into our fingers. And we'll do the finger by finger, breath by breath. Breathing out, feeling to the very tip of your thumbs, maybe elongating them slightly. And then going through all the fingers, one by one, breath by breath. Maybe letting that sense of breath and finger help us feel right to that tip where finger ends and space beyond it begins. And on the next round, a little more sense of the 3D volume of each finger as you breathe out. Not only the tip, but the entire 3D surface, 2D surface, surrounding. Enclosing the 3D space of your fingers. And gradually letting that one by one, breath by breath, finger by finger, just fade and slightly, ever so slightly spread all of your fingers, like all the fingertips touching the air, surrounded and touching the entire surface of each finger. That 3D volume of fingers filled with what? There was a documentary, I think, about quantum physics called What the Bleep Do We Know? What the bleep do we know about what is filling our fingers? And rest into that. And notice what immediacy of experience almost rises to meet you as you drop through layers of what you think is there. Fingers are great. They are very sensitive. Just noticing how your fingers feel. They even feel like stuff, like your usual hand. And we say, I know it like the back of my hand. Do we know this? Maybe our fingers be a place where we tend to feel a little more easily. We can fall through that sense of preconceived maps into what rises directly in our experience. To meet us throughout all of what we call the body. Letting whatever it is that we're feeling in our hands be like not so different from whatever else is filling our whole body. And I often find it helpful this point in practice to lie down. Totally optional if you'd like, and just come to lying down. And find yourself here. Entire back body supported by the ground. You can lay down into. Follow the breath in and out of your inner terrain. Your hands and fingers. What are those hands and fingers? The entire volume of your hands. And some way there's some dance of being going on inside that volume. Some flow of existence. If you knew nothing, how would you know they even have hands? And what would you take hands to be? Hands are part of our body. Do they feel like body in this moment? Particle or wave or both or neither, or maybe just the classifications that we have and the words that we have and the labels that we have at some point no longer serve us. And so to all this body, the feet and toes, and what fills the feet and toes. feet and toes, hands and fingers, arms and legs. Our limbs. Throbbing, filled, sparkling, whatever word you'd like to put to it. The sum dance of existence. Very tangible, yes. And yet something so subtle that even as it touches, just doesn't feel like what we think it should feel. Just noticing now the trunk of the body, the shoulders, the hips, and how within this trunk of our body, what do we find when we don't know what we'll find? And maybe tuning into the heart area some. Our emotional center, where we can expect, oh, this happened, or this is how I was feeling before. Some label of a feeling. And letting whatever is there just be there. And seeing what it's like to perceive it as this dance It is our emotional experience, and it is at the same time this what the bleep do we know? Dance of existence. And instead of it being kind of like a bypassing of the kind of raw feeling we might have, whatever it is, that opening can bring it more to a direct contact, poignancy. The ineffable juiciness of an emotion. Comprised of particles, waves, maybe even something like mind. Awareness, presence, who knows what. And then letting the heart area be. And feeling into the lower dantian area, a little bit below your belly button, inside you. And as you feel into that area and just the existence of it, whatever it is, you can also feel our whole trunk and our limbs and that lower dantian. As somehow existing. But where that how is not quite any map that we have. And resting into that mystery, total freaking mystery. That's also totally not mysterious, not something that's foggy or from somewhere else, but just direct and just for us. And never holding across two moments together, but just streaming, live streaming the immediacy of our own experience. I'll be quiet for a little while, as there's not much to say. And you can gradually begin to move those fingers, those toes. Moving mystery. And can gradually transition to our time for some discussion together. I have been having a lot of fun experimenting here with some fancy physics. I can gather that I am both very I feel the effects. I feel the effects of what a story of science can enable with this. Well, I guess part of the tension that can be explored here, and maybe we discuss a little, is that sometimes it feels a little confusing how people in spiritual practices use quantum, because in a way encouraging us to open to a sense of mystery. And a feeling that I know I've felt more than my usual, sit down and I'm gonna meditate. I I relate to it, and at the same time, it's kind of again, it just feels a little confusing because it's using a scientific story in a way and the authority of science in a way to kind of a lot of times you kind of almost feel like they're trying to bless a spiritual experience like see we're we can have these experiences because science is saying that we can have these experiences, and I'm just honestly not so sure about what that does for spirituality or for science. But what I do feel can be really interesting is to explore our maps and what gives us our maps and what we can use to help us not stop at a map and be like, oh, that's it, but actually even use a map like the particle wave thing. It's getting kind of confusing. I'm making more random gestures. If you're listening to this, actually use a map to almost point towards what's underneath that map with a sense of not landing on anything other than our own direct experience. And so I believe next time, I'm not sure, but I believe next time we'll begin to explore some mundane physics. Yeah, and even see what can mundane physics help us to feel, where we don't take it just as that map, but as that pointer. The map that lets us not stop at any particular map. And that's going to be my totally maybe unintelligible teaser for the next session. So let's see what is the experience here, and even some of maybe your thoughts of how quantum is used in spirituality, spiritual circles. Anything goes. David, hey. JB, good to see you. Maisha, good to see you back. Swiss R, great to see you too. Firefly, so many of the regulars. Love these sessions and your perspective on this topic. Any chance to make a short course exploration someday? Firefly, tell me more what you're thinking about. As I said when the beginning, I'm just kind of shocked, like I can put something up like this and, people show up. So you can tell me what you have in mind and how it would support you. Mike, could listen to you all day. Thanks so much. Needed to get back into my body. Well, thank you, Mike, for your compliment. And yeah, this is even what gave me the idea of doing this series, in part because I do a very body-centered meditation practice. As those of you who are familiar, we really stay with that feeling. There's nothing too esoteric that I tend to get into. And I think that that could be a way where I was wondering, does that seem limiting? Oh, just the body. We've spent time just feeling our toes, our lower body presence. And definitely, the more I practice feeling the body, the less it feels like what I tended to expect my body to feel like. And this series is kind of like a back to body, body centered practice, but also a sense of not feeling that that label limits us. Ravine, I think as you said, it's because it has the authority as true, as the true story of our age. So it confers truth value. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just that it's just very interesting dynamic, right? We have, people in spirituality through the ages have had all kinds of experiences, but then they, go to talk about them and, doesn't make sense. What this is I know my hand. What are you talking about? and And I definitely feel that. I was a real kind of scientist oriented. We don't want to be taken in. We don't want to be taken in by woo woo. And at the same time, like I've never done the double slit experiment. I've never personally experienced that. What is it that is it actually enabling me and the directness of my experience? So that's what I keep coming back to. It's really Firefly, just an intro to these ideas and accompanying meditations, maybe 7 days. Really love how this opens me up to my body in ways that traditional messaging body scans don't. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I think of I think I shared this at the in the first session of the drawing on the right side of your brain, not drawing from the right side of your brain, but where we tend to just kind of label something and then draw the label rather than draw what we see, and that a lot of that body scans. If I say, oh, feel your fingers, feel your shoulder. feel, feel like we're actually listing the labels. And so this is like, sometimes I call this, body scan or meditating from the left side of your brain, because it's like, feel the breath in and out. It's like, I could just go through a whole body scan and I'm just, LOL, yes. I'm just totally like feeling the labels. And so like, if there's something that we're kind of exploring here, and this has definitely been part of my journey for the last coming on 15 years at least now, is that how to actually feel what you feel rather than what you think you feel. So totally that makes sense. And I think that would be awesome if there was a group that was interested in doing that. It would be amazing to really kind of gather and get to be like explorers together. I feel like this is always a bit one-sided, but this is best we can do. Vervain, Or do people like to believe? So, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that there's both sides of the, that divide. It's like there's the push of, yeah, this is the truth. The science gives the truth, and we want to believe that it gives the truth. And then there's people who are like, ugh, stop telling me what is true. It creates all kinds of even wider difficulties in our world. I feel like if we could more feel into the directness of the dance of existence in our hearts, not to sound too much like a Hallmark card, but as a student of the diamond approach and the inquiries that they do, it's just like the sense of really coming into contact with the immediacy of your own experience and what supports you in that, and where there's a resonance of knowing when you touch in on something that feels truly real, that no one else can really, I feel no one else and no one else, other authority can confer upon you. It's my own view is it's an inside out kind of job, but it's definitely can be helped along. And in my teaser for next week, maybe it can even be helped along by some mundane physics. Firefly says, would love to revisit sometime. I lost the probably what you were responding to, but yeah, keep coming back. And the sessions here, I know I sometimes mention something that happened before, and I do make them eventually available, just freely. But there's always this revisiting of the same things. I really just say the same things, practice the same things. It's just looks like there's different themes from within that. Vervain says, I agree with Firefly, yeah. Who are the truth conferers? And how do we get to be our own truth conferers? Even as we use what is available to us. Firefly, I caught that before. Yeah, LOL, yes, yeah. David, I have to try drawing on my brain sometimes. Who knows what could happen? Yeah. Drawing from the right, those prepositions, they'll get you every time. They will get you every time. And I do encourage, and I have, the tracks here on Insight Timer and elsewhere, even as we go into these explorations, the more there's touching in on the foundations. They support these adventures, and so there's guided practices you can do here. Until next time, thank you all. Lots of fun. Take care.